Hello everybody. How you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. How's it going? Starting a little early today. I was going to start at 11:30, but I think today starting early at 11. So, welcome. And let's get the show on the road here. So today I got a lot of stuff to talk about as usual. Let's see. So I'm going to take kind of a bit of a break from the rabid like recently in the streams we've been exploring different right-wing movements throughout the years, and want to take a stream here and just sort of talk about stuff that's in the news, because there's a lot going on in the news right now that I think would be beneficial for us to cover. So, anyway, but before we get into that, this is what we're looking at here. Hey, Lewis the Hedgehog, how you doing? Thanks for coming in, man. So, this is where we're at. We're almost finished with this. Looking pretty good. Just got to fill in this little area. Then I think what we'll do is we'll put some like evil writing on it, and it'll look like it's a page from the Necronomicon or something. Right? I think that'll be kind of cool. So maybe we'll do that. Anyway, so, how to even start today? Because the theme of the name of today's stream is Republicans Go Full Fascist. Right. And why did I say that? Well, there's a couple of different things that, fascism can be expressed in different ways. And usually one thing that's common to all fascist regimes throughout the world is you have a shared narrative, like a mythological narrative, right, of like, of romanticizing the past for any particular, nation or whatever, right? And along with that comes with, it usually comes with sort of a designated enemy, an other that you can fight against. So in Nazi Germany, this is, of course, was Jewish people. And today, in the United States for far-right fascist movements, it kind of changes every now and then, right? So for a long time, it was communists. You had the Red Scare and evil commies were the bad guys, stuff like that, during the Cold War, that kind of thing. And then shortly after that, it became Islamic terrorism, after 9/11, that kind of thing. Now it's sort of like the big bad guy is quickly becoming leftists of all stripes, right? But in particular, the sort of SJW woke culture warrior types. These are becoming the bad guy that conservative fascist movements are trying to turn into the big evil enemy, The big evil enemy who always has to be simultaneously super weak, but also incredibly strong and invincible, and nobody can stop them. And this is like, we're seeing a lot of this now in conservative rhetoric. They're talking about cancel culture, things like that. The left wing in this country is forcing us to do XYZ, blah, 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 right? We can't stop them. We're the only ones standing up against the woke culture, culture warrior, cancel culture mob, shit like that. And you're seeing, and a lot of this is a reaction to the election still. It's been 6 months already, right? More than 6 months since the election, right? Biden has been president already for, what's almost 4 months now, right? You think they would have, like, moved on from this. You think, like, they would have faced reality and said, okay, well, we gave it our best, we lost, let's move on. But no, the far right wing, the Trump people, the Trump supporters, and Republicans in general have doubled down on this. On this, this idea that the election was stolen and all that shit, and it's because the evil right, far left, woke mob is taking over. The socialists are taking over, shit like that, right? This is what we're seeing now a lot. You're seeing it on Fox and on all of the ridiculous, right-wing news media places, places like fucking One American Network and shit like that. And it's being expressed in the in conservative culture in a few different ways, One of those is doubling down on ridiculous culture war bullshit, and I'm sure there's been a lot of talk about this recently over the last 3 or 4 months. As the Biden administration pushes forward with actual policy agenda, right? Policy changes for the, significant policy changes for the first time in probably, a generation, in a decade at least. We're actually getting real policy changes from Biden, from an American president. The Republicans are instead of trying to, criticize those changes or even work with the Democrats in order to get their input on those changes, those types of things. Instead of that, what they're doing is they're fighting back with culture war shit. And this is an expression of sorry, my voice is all I need some liquid here, shit, sorry. It's because I'm starting to talk here, and that's why my voice is getting all fucked up. Anyway, this is kind of this is part of that process, that part of the othering process, right? Where your movement needs a coherent enemy to fight against, right? And so, we're seeing lots of ridiculous things in the news over the last few months, where conservatives and stuff, they're fighting against, they're complaining about things like Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head and Coca-Cola and, shit like that. And this is really nothing new. It's been something, all throughout the, Obama and Trump years. Whenever a corporation would do something that conservatives don't like, their go-to thing is to boycott it. I don't know if you remember Gillette razors. They put out that they put out a commercial talking about how men shouldn't, be toxic, and that was too much for the MRM people, too much for the Trump supporters. They went nuts over that. Or Keurig said something. I can't even remember what Keurig did or what they said, but that pissed some people off, and conservatives went and started buying Keurigs and smashing them, which is like, I'm sure the people that worked at Keurig were laughing all the way to the bank for that. That was some funny shit. So, that's basically part of the process, part of the othering process. This is how you consolidate your followers, right? And it's creating this sort of this narrative that they're the victims of a wide conspiracy. Lewis, my brother just walked out, claims you're going too far. Really? Ask him what I said. That I'd like to know. Ask your brother what I said exactly. That was too far. I'd like to know what he's talking about, because we can discuss that if he wants to. I don't know. It's up to him. Anyway, and this has been so we kind of went through this phase for a few months where they were just randomly attacking left-wing movements and woke culture in general. And now we're entering that phase where we're starting to see actual laws get passed that are, coming out of this sort of, I guess, mass hysteria on the right. Because this is usually how it goes. Usually how it goes is that, some pundits or something will make up some stupid bullshit, right? You'll hear something on it used to come from Rush Limbaugh, but now it's more likely to come from somebody like, Tucker Carlson or Tim Pool, something like that. They'll start with some ridiculous horseshit that'll make the rounds there, and then it'll go all the way through conservative social media, and then eventually that shit trickles up to the politicians, and they'll start trying to pass laws regarding this. And this is what we saw with things like the trans bathroom debate back in 2015 now, the trans bathroom thing. I don't know if you remember. That's exactly the pattern that it went through. It went through sort of those conservative grifter types first. The Rush Limbaughs and the Sean Hannitys and the Tucker Carlsons, and went through them. And then, then suddenly, like, every other kind of Republican ripoff artist out there, everybody from, like, Tim Pool and Milo Yiannopoulos and all those people all got in on the controversy, right? And then, and it went through social media, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually, some Republican politicians go, hey, I could make a career out of this. I can make a name for myself if I try to pass a bill that bans trans people from bathrooms. And that's exactly how it went. That's sort of how populism on the right works now. It works in that sort of reverse, that reverse sort of trickle down like path, right? And one thing that we're seeing, this is kind of the disturbing thing about this, is that these types of reverse populist hysteria, I guess is what you could call it, has negative effects on real people's lives, right? So now we're starting to see, for example, a rash of laws getting passed that has to do with banning trans people from sports and that kind of thing, in several different states, which is kind of, ridiculous, right? Before we move on to that, one more example of this that I wanted to say before we moved on. There was a really good example of this sort of reverse populism that kind of failed. It was, but if you remember last week, there was a story that came out about how Joe Biden's climate plan would limit the amount of beef that you could eat. And this was sort of like a fake news story that started in the Daily Mail, and then people started tweeting it and stuff. This idea, and then the idea was that Biden's going to keep you're only going to be able to eat 4 pounds of beef a year, right? That kind of thing. And that sort of went through social media, and then even people like, eventually that hit like politicians. Politicians started retweeting that shit, right? So, for example, I've got a screenshot here. This is Lauren Boebert, right? And let me just zoom in on this. This is Lauren Boebert's tweet talking about how, wait, how come I can't zoom in on that? Fuck you. Zoom in. Anyway. Crap. It won't let me zoom in, but you can read it, right? Joe Biden's climate plan includes cutting 90% of red meat from our diets by 2030. They want to limit us to about 4 pounds a year. Why doesn't Joe stay out of my kitchen? And then this was another one this is Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, posting a screen cap from Fox News talking about this same phony baloney story. Kind of how that works, right? And, in this particular case, that story ended up being bullshit, right? That was fake news that was put out by the Daily Mail. This is why you don't read this is why you shouldn't believe tabloids, people, because tabloids just make shit up. The Daily Mail is essentially one step above the fucking National Enquirer, when it comes to journalistic integrity. And what the story was, it was called How Biden's Climate Plan Could Limit You to Just One Burger a Month, Cost $3.5 a year per person in taxes, and force you to spend $55,000 on an electric car and crush American jobs. That was the name of the that huge long ass sentence I just said. That was the name of the story. And that was in the Daily Mail. And in the Daily Mail, the person who wrote it cited a study from the University of Michigan Center for Sustainable Systems, which talked about how if we were to limit, the amount of beef that people ate to roughly 4 pounds a year, we could cut greenhouse emissions by 90%. Right? You know, basically, or rather, not, sorry. Actually, I got that backwards. What it was is that it was the impacts of if you were to reduce consumption of red meat by 90%, the positive environmental impacts. That's what it was. Sorry. Totally read that wrong. Anyway, so yeah, the problem is that this was just a study done by the university there, and it had nothing to do with Joe Biden or Joe Biden's official, proposal or policies that have been enacted. Nothing like that. They kind of just made that up out of whole cloth, the Daily Mail. And this is why you don't believe shit that you buy, in a fucking supermarket tabloid. Because it's bullshit. Well, somebody should have told that to Greg Abbott and Lauren Boebert. Those tweets are still up. The tweets I just showed you, they're still there. Still spreading this misinformation. They never took those tweets down. They never posted a retraction. Fox News eventually posted a retraction because, but the thing is that, like, what Fox News, they do this all the time. They'll report some shit that's complete bullshit, and then at like 3 in the morning, they'll have their news anchor guy go on and say, "Oh yeah, that story we said, we were incorrect." And then officially, so then they can put that on YouTube and shit and see, like, officially, we retracted that story because we have journalistic integrity, when in real life they don't. And, 90% of the fucking people that watch Fox News will never see that retraction, and even if they did see it, it wouldn't even register with them in the first place. It's like the damage is done. The, misinformation has already been, presented, right? So that's kind of fucked up. And, anyway, where was I going with this? Yeah, so that was a good example, right, of how, sometimes it doesn't always work, right? But more often than not, it actually will, and getting back to trans rights here. And trans rights are an example of how this kind of reverse populist flow, I guess you could call it. Reverse right-wing populist flow, I guess. I don't know if that's kind of awkward, but I don't know, until we come up with a better term for that. Right. It's an example of how this can affect real people's lives. Because right now we're seeing, because this is what happened, right? Over the last couple of, say, 2 or 3 months, there's been all this talk in right-wing news media about trans athletes. Specifically, male to female trans athletes, right, who are competing in high schools and, competing in women's sports. And this has become a big deal, right? Now, here's the thing about this, okay? I do believe that this is something that can be debated, all right? And now, me personally, I don't think it's something that should be outlawed or whatever. I think there are rules already that are established where you have to, be on, you have to, for example, if you're a trans woman and you're competing in a sport for women, then, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there's already rules in place where you have to be on, the medication for a certain amount of time, and you have to have, levels of testosterone and stuff like that are at a certain level, that kind of thing. And this means that, you're not competing with an unfair advantage from, and that's a legitimate debate. It's a legitimate debate to say, hey, these trans women, have an unfair advantage because they have muscles and things that they grew, that when they were men, before they transitioned, right? And that might give them an unfair advantage. That's a perfectly legitimate, debate to have, right? And there are right now, and professionally, there are rules. Like I just said, there are rules that say, they have to be on the they have to have transitioned over, this amount of time, and they have to have this amount of, level of testosterone, and blah 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 blah, and that ensures that it's fair, right? But that's not good enough, because we're seeing. Here's the problem. Okay, the problem is that in a lot of states already, it's not, you know, in a lot of states already, it's not really possible, for minors to transition over, right? And this has kind of sparked this like huge like culture like freak out on the right, where they see like, so now they're starting to pass all these laws that are they're designed to basically block trans girls, minors who are trans, right? Trans girls from competing in sports against, cis girls, right? Um, and this is affecting real people's lives, Now, whether you support this or you don't, this is a perfect example of how the right wing fascist hate machine works. Perfect example. The people, some fucking asshole pundit like Tucker Carlson or somebody makes a whole bunch of segments about it, drums up a bunch of hate. It goes all throughout social media. People post and repost this shit. A bunch of YouTube parasites make 100 million videos about it in order to get clicks or whatever. And that just drives up the, and then people post this shit all over Facebook, blah, 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 right? And then it gets around to some fucking shifty-ass, slimy politician who decides that he's gonna, like, use it to get votes, and slime his way into a fucking, higher office or some shit. And then they start passing laws, and the people the normal, ordinary, real people down at the bottom, their lives get affected by all this shit. Okay? And this is a perfect fucking example. So now we're starting to see this in multiple states right now. There are, there's been a lot of news recently about this in general. Like, for example, there was an interview with Caitlyn Jenner, where she came out, like, apparently Caitlyn Jenner's running for governor in California because they got enough signatures to fucking recall the governor here. I really hope that, they lose, because Gavin Newsom is really not that bad of a governor, in my opinion. I mean, seriously. Right. But whatever. She's going to run. She's going to run, and Caitlyn Jenner is, it's doubly hypocritical because she is a trans athlete. One, and like in the 70s, she won Olympic gold medals and shit, and now she's against young trans women competing in sports. It's like, it's okay when you fucking, I don't know. It's a complicated thing, and it's kind of, but it is a little hypocritical there. You would think out of all people who would support trans women in sports it'd be Caitlyn Jenner, but I guess not, So you're starting to see all these laws getting passed, right? So far, 33 states have proposed 117 different laws in order to restrict trans athletes, right? So far, only 3 of those have been signed into law, or sorry, 4 of them have been signed into law, which was in Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Alabama. And then one in South Dakota was actually vetoed. So there you go. That's nice. And this basically, they all do essentially the same thing. They block trans girls from competing in sports, right? Essentially that. And it's funny how, like, all these people, like, I don't know. Anyway, I have here let me go ahead and just copy this down here, right? So here's one of the sources. This actually comes from a Fox channel, so I'm not going to open that. But if you want to look at that later, this is where I'm getting this quote from. This is a quote from Governor Lee, right, who voiced support for a bill, and I believe this person is from, let me see, what state is this governor of? Let me just check real fast. This was in Tennessee. So this is the governor of Tennessee. And here's the quote in support of this law, right? And what it is that it requires transgender students in Tennessee, high school and middle schools to play sports based on the sex that is listed on their birth certificate. So that's what the law says. So it just completely ignores all of the, all of the rules, all of the research, and established processes already in place, and just says, "Fuck it, you have to do what your birth certificate says." Right. Here's the quote. "I do believe that transgenders participating in women's sports will destroy women's sports," Lee said. "It will ruin the opportunity for girls to earn scholarships. It will put a glass ceiling back over women that hasn't been there for some time. I think it's bad for women and for women's sports." You notice one thing that he didn't mention there. He didn't mention men's sports, right? Why is that? Why is this always, this is the angle that they take it. They take it as these are men involved, invading women's spaces. How come it's not the other way around? I remember back in the 90s, for example, there was sort of a story that was in the news for a few weeks regarding girls in high school who wanted to play football, right? And one girl, for example, who actually tried to, wanted to try out for the football team and was able to meet the physical requirements of it. And the coach said it was cool, and then somebody sued. And I looked for this story, and I remember this story. This was in 1996 or something like that. I couldn't find it, which was bullshit, because I really wanted to because it kind of demonstrates nobody really gave a shit, but the people who ended up suing were part of this sort of anti-gay religious group. And goddamn, what was the state from? I can't remember the exact particular details of the story. I mean, this was more than 20 years ago. But I think it was sort of it was really telling. It was what would you think would happen? Because here's the argument, right, that you get from the people that are against trans women competing in sports in high school. This is the argument that you're getting, is that they're dominating the sports, right? And exactly what this quote from the governor of Tennessee said, it will prevent women from, young women from getting scholarships and stuff. And this is kind of that sort of turfy argument, this is what they say. They say it's really, trans women are really just men who are invading women's spaces, blah, 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 all that bullshit. And, the real women are actually losing out because, now scholarships that are supposed to go to the real women are going to these trans men, trans women and shit like that, right? And it's sort of this is always the go-to argument when it comes from the right wing, when anything, anything that has to do with gay rights or trans rights or anything like that. It's always sort of protect the little girls. If you remember the trans bathroom argument, fight that we had 5 years ago, right? That was the same argument they had then too, was that, men were going to invade the women's bathroom and molest little girls, right? It's always that. It's always that same, it's the same, and that just kind of goes to show, the right wing, they don't really have any real arguments. They just recycle the same ones over and over. That was back in the day when they were talking, gay rights. That was the other thing too. Oh, the gay people are going to molest children. Right? If you allow gay teachers to be in your schools, they'll molest your children. And this is just basically a recycling of that argument. Except now, instead of molesting them, they're going to steal your scholarships or all that. Or they're going to brutalize you in in your sports or whatever, right? And that's the thing. It's this, and like I said before, I do think this is something that should be debatable, right? It is something that should be debated. You shouldn't allow someone who's just recently transitioned and still has, 100 pounds of muscle to compete in a wrestling, competition, for example. What if that was the other way around, though? That's the other question nobody ever asks. What if a trans man, trans boy in high school, I guess, right, competed in a wrestling, boys wrestling, and then just dominated there? What if that were to happen? What do you think? What do you think the argument would be then? I think that the right wing would collectively lose their fucking minds, and I think one day that's going to happen. I think one day a trans, you know, trans boy is going to either compete on the football team or in baseball or in some other male sport and is just going to like whip some ass. And the right wing in this country is going to lose their collective fucking brains over it. Because that argument won't like fly anymore. They won't be able to say, "Hey, the trans boy is going to molest the other cis boys," right? They won't be able to use that argument because that's like, you know, that kind of goes against like the prevailing right wing narrative that women are always victims, right? So, you know, and then like that's kind of the argument. Seriously, when it comes to on the right wing, the idea that girls and women are always victims and men and boys and stuff should be responsible. You know, they're always responsible for their own actions, and girls and women for some reason just don't have any agency. That's really what this argument boils down to, right? If you really think about it, that's what this argument is boiling down to, And you hear that a lot from right wingers and stuff too. You ever hear the term "women are children"? This is something that you get from MRM people, from men's rights activists, from MGTOW people, shit like that, misogynists of all type, and you also hear it from alt-right kind of shitbags like that. This idea that women are children, and they'll say this because they'll say, women act like children. They don't have any, and, they don't have any agency. They fucking they don't take their lives seriously enough. And men are forced to. Men are forced to be, men are forced to take their lives seriously from day one, ever since you're a child. Boys they'll get beat up. They always have to face repercussions, and women don't. And that's why women grow up, and that's why women are children. That's essentially it, in so many words, the argument. And this is how, this is kind of how they're framing this anti-trans shit. They're trying to make it sound like, it's not about competition. It's about women being victimized. And it's kind of bullshit. And that's the problem. The problem is that it's bullshit has no real basis in fucking reality, but is now being codified into law. Right? Exactly like you say, Lewis, I noticed, sure, it's fine if Republican men invade women's spaces. Exactly right. You're exactly correct. They never seem to give a shit about that. When men invade women's spaces, it's only the other way around. And it's because it's a lie. In real life, they don't actually give a shit. And they're just using this because that's something that resonates with people emotionally. The idea that children are being exploited. I mean, holy fuck, that's what QAnon's all about. Right? QAnon is all about, supposed to be preventing child molestation and stuff like that, right? But you notice they don't seem to give a fuck when, like, say, Matt Gaetz, for example, gets, accused of sex with a minor, or fucking what's that other guy's name, Josh Duggar, that just came out in the news. You don't see the QAnon people flipping their shit over those two people, do you? Of course not. Because it's all imaginary, made up bullshit. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of scary stuff here. We're starting to see also in different states, not just the transgender bans in sports, but also things like a couple of states are starting to pass laws that are preventing minors from getting any type of reassignment therapy, which does not include surgery, right? Because I want to kind of say, like, I think myself personally, I'm not a trans person, right? But I don't think personally that you should be able to get bottom surgery, for example, until you're 18, right? I think that's just logical. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, when you're a kid, when you're 15, 16, 17, you're a child. You're a fucking child. You should not be able to make that decision for yourself just yet. You know, surgery is kind of permanent. There's no going back. If you get bottom surgery, that's it. The end. And, you know, until some day goes by where you can, you know, technology advances far enough to where that's reversible, I think that has to be a choice that someone has to make as an adult. Right now, there's always that, you know. I need a pencil. Hang on. Let me get a pencil here, guys. All right. So there's always that argument that some people are more mature than others, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever, who cares? You know? The date that we've chosen as a society to, you know, give people that agency is 18. And I don't see, you know, if you can't even, like, vote or buy a pack of cigarettes till you're 18, you shouldn't be able to get permanent surgery. You know, I would even extend that to, you know, other things as well. Right? I would say shit like, you know, I'd be perfectly happy, for example, not allowing minors to drink until they're 21. Or, you know, in all states. I know certain states it's still 18. Stuff like that, but that's a different discussion. So, you know, the thing is, there's nobody out there on the left or even trans people who would advocate for giving bottom surgery to minors, right? But there are certain things that minors can do, you know, to kind of help along that transition. And one of those things is puberty blockers, right? Now, that sounds kind of weird and bad, and it sounds like, you know, but I kind of looked into it, you know, I was reading about it, and puberty blockers are apparently reversible, right? So why not? I guess, right? So that's the other set of laws that are going around right now, because now, you know, in addition to the laws that are preventing trans you know, trans girls from competing in sports, there's also laws that are preventing minors from taking puberty blockers, right? Or you know, what are they called here? Puberty blockers, or cross hormone therapy, right, is another one. And, you know, these are laws that are specifically targeting, right, trans people. And that's the thing about it, is that if these things are reversible, then there's no good reason to legally prevent people from taking them, right? If they're reversible, if they don't cause any long-term health effects, you know, which I think that is actually a legitimate argument too. You know, one could say, is there a study that says, for example, that this causes long-term health effects? Then if that's true, then we can talk about that. But so far, it doesn't look like that. So far from what I've read, right? It doesn't look like, you know, if you take hormone blockers that it's going to mess up your, you know, growth, for example, you know, or it's going to, like, give you cancer or some shit like that. You know, there's no proof of any of that. Nothing like that at all. So why are they passing laws trying to prevent children from taking these things, right? You know? Especially, and that's the thing, it's like, because I can understand, you know, the argument goes like this, well, you're a child, you know, blah, 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 and, but, so what? So you're a child if your parents agree, right? I could even understand that route, like if you were to say, okay, they can't take it unless they get parental supervision. Totally understand that. I would even support that. You know why? Because kids don't have rights. Kids have never had rights in this country. You don't have rights. As a child, you know, if you're a minor, I hate to break it to you, you don't have rights. You don't. You're essentially one step above property. That's it. You know, if you're at school, you don't have any rights. You know, you don't have right to privacy, at least. Any shit that you keep in school in your locker or whatever, that's not private. They can open that shit up anytime they want. They can go through your books anytime they want. They can go through your phone anytime they want, right? They can go through your social media anytime they want. This is all, and you know, this is just the school, and you know, let alone your parents. If you're a minor, your parents can do whatever the fuck they want to you. They can take away anything that you have, shit that you buy yourself. They can take that away from you, right? They can decide where you go, what school you go to, what you wear. They can decide if you, your parents can decide, for example, if they want to, what religion you're going to be in, you know, if they want to circumcise you, you know, they can decide that on your behalf as when you're an infant, right? Your parents can do anything they fucking want because when you're a child, you're not, you don't have rights. I hate, you know, I mean, beyond those legal rights of, like, if you get arrested, the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney, shit like that, but you don't have, you know, you don't have the ability to consent to anything. And this is also the reason why things like, you know, child labor laws exist, right? Or age of consent laws exist. This is why, because it goes both ways. You know, the same laws that protect children from being sexually exploited by molesters and rapists and shit, they also prevent children from, you know, basically living with the same types of you know, ability to make choices that adults have. Okay, so I would, you know, getting back to the discussion, I would even go that far, and I would even say, yes, you should, you know, if you want to require the parents' permission in order to be on these, you know, in order to, like, take puberty blockers or something, I would even go that far, and I would even support that. But just outlawing them completely, just making a law saying, no, you just can't have them, there's really no good reason for that. There's no good reason beyond some ridiculous right-wing religious, you know, Christian horse shit, right, playing into a fucking culture war so some, like, asshole politician can drum up support because he's pretending that he wants to be governor one day or some shit. That's what that all is. That's what it all is. So, but we're seeing that. This is what we're seeing in multiple states. You know, there's another, you know, something like, here, check it out. So I have this map here, right? Let me open this link. This is from, let's see, is this the right one? Yeah. Here we go. This is from CNN. Let me just turn on my monitor here. Hopefully this thing will not start playing fucking, like, noise and shit. Okay. So this is from CNN, and let me just put the link down in the chat here, right? Dynacat, thanks for joining, man. I will read your comments in a moment. Alright, so this is record-breaking year for anti-transgender legislation affect minors the most. So here you can see this is a breakdown of all the laws that have been, you know, proposed, right? Bathroom, locker room bans and stuff. Okay, so that's blue. Transgender medical care, right? When they say medical care, that means blocking transgender children from getting, you know, things like puberty blockers, cross hormone therapy, that kind of thing. And then other, you know, so that's, so you can kind of see it's like how much it's increased 2021. This massive, right? Here's a map of all of the states which have started to introduce bills. So these are, blue are bills that block transgender, you know, sports. And then yellow is where they're, like, been signed into law. Right? So you can see it's like, and, you know, you notice this concentration, like, these are all red states, mostly, you know. Some of them are, some of these are actually, you know, kind of, flipping states. You know, what do they call those? You know, purple states, you know, things like Michigan, Washington, you know, Wisconsin. Sometimes those go red. Some, you know, battleground states, I guess you can call it. But it's still, you know, you can kind of see, put this map over an election map, and you can see, you know, this is where it is. It's like it's in those conservative strongholds, right? So, kind of disturbing shit, man. It's really sad to see that, let's turn that off. It's really sad to see, you know, getting back to the theme of the stream here, that the new enemy for the conservative right-wing fascist types is now trans children. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it'll circle back to illegal immigration again once the election comes around. But this is really sad. It's really sad and disturbing to see that you know they're lashing out against children. And let's not forget, these are children we're talking about, trans children, right? People, people who are very in that time of their lives when they're teenagers, where you don't know what's going on and you're confused, right? And you have weird feelings, and and plus you're a child. You got to remember, someone who's 16, for example, like imagine 10 years ago that person was 6 years old, right? 10 years ago for me, I was like already like had a house and a career and 2 cars, right? So that's the difference. This is why it's so important, in order to, this is why they say children can't have agency, because they're literally children. They have no experience. They don't know what's going on, and that's why they're can be so easily be exploited. And this is why it's really up to us to protect them. And part of what I think protecting them is making sure that rabid right-wing asshole fascist pieces of shit don't pass laws that exploit them like this for their own fucking political gain. It's atrocious, man. Seriously. I don't know. I don't usually make a lot of videos about trans people in general because, I don't really know much about it, right? And generally I see the subject of, like, trans subjects are kind of a landmine. You always say something wrong that'll piss somebody off, whether you support one side or the other. Someone's always going to get mad at what you say, so I generally avoid those subjects, because, and also the way I see it, it's like there are other people out there that can say anything that I would want to say, usually better. So it's like, more often than not, I don't really have much to contribute to the conversation, because it's like, well, that person over there ContraPoints or somebody, I already said it way better than I ever will. So it's like, okay. But, what I can understand is when people are exploited, and when people are, when people are being exploited and when people are being oppressed for political reasons. I can understand that. And this is what's going on here. Right? The trans women, young trans women, they're being exploited for political reasons. So these Republican assholes can, like, fucking drum up support, get elected, and get that sweet campaign money. That's exactly what it is. So this is why I'm choosing to fucking speak up against this. Right. Anyway, so that's kind of fucked up. That was one part of what I wanted to talk about. Where are we at here? Shit, we're at 48 minutes already. Damn. I guess this is a good time to transition into our other subject, which I wanted to talk about. First off, this recount in Arizona, and then ultimately just voter suppression laws in general, right? So, the other way, so that's one way, getting way back to the beginning of our stream here when we were talking about how the right wing is reacting to losing the election, right? Still, 6 months later. One way they're reacting is to double down on culture war shit, which is being expressed in, laws that are taking away trans rights, right, unfortunately. The other way that they're reacting is to kind of be in complete denial about what happened, so that you've kind of seen this growing conspiracy theory on the right about how Joe Biden stole the election, and that was kind of there since day one, right? Ever since the election happened, even the night of the election, Joe Biden stole it, and that was the big, the big lie that you're seeing. CNN talks about this a lot. Rachel Maddow and shit, they always talking about the big lie, right? And it's really, what it is. I mean, so the big lie, of course, is taken from Mein Kampf. That's something that Adolf Hitler kind of coined. Or I don't know if he coined it, but he definitely said it a lot, The idea that you tell a huge lie and you get the public to believe it. You know, the more you tell it, the more they believe it, and then you can basically exploit the reaction for your own political gain. That's the big lie, right? And, you know, right-wing fascist regimes, you know, or just fascist regimes in general, I mean, they're not always right-wing, but, you know, totalitarian regimes the world over have used this method one way or the other, you know, including things like, you know, Stalin and Pol Pot. And, you know, they're not always right-wing fascists. Sometimes they're sort of, you know, communist totalitarians as well. Right? So I don't want to leave them out. You know, I don't want to give somebody like Pol Pot a pass or whatever. Although, you know, something to keep in mind, though, regimes like Pol Pot and Stalin and you know, they're also extremely conservative. Let's not forget that, you know, just because they're actually sort of a, you know, communist in name or whatever doesn't mean that they aren't extremely conservative. Because they were. So anyway, that's a whole nother subject. We can talk about that later one day. So yeah, this is the big lie. The big lie that the Joe Biden administration somehow stole the election, and, you know, Donald Trump was robbed, right? And right now we're living in a, you know, we have an illegitimate presidency right now. And one thing we're seeing now is you know, recounts, right? And we have this recount going on in Arizona, which is kind of useless because Arizona already had a hand recount months ago. There was already a hand recount, and also two independent audits of voting machines in Arizona to kind of see, you know, did something go wrong, blah 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 blah. And, you know, all of these efforts so far have done very little to actually shift the number of votes, right? But that wasn't good enough, and the GOP in Arizona, you know, successfully sued to get another recount going. Of course, they had to pay for it themselves because, you know, recounts are not free. And they got this company called Cyber Ninjas to do the recount. So they had to sue the state in order to get access to the ballots. They get access to the ballots, and now they handed it over to this company called Cyber Ninjas, who did not have any experience in recounts. And so some people are very, you know, concerned about this because according to the law in Arizona, in particular Maricopa County in Arizona, ballots have to be preserved. And these guys are, you know, they've been observed doing things that are going to damage the ballots. So they start this recount. There was a, you know, they also, it's a private recount, and they managed to keep out observers, right? So they say no reporters allowed, right? That number one right there is a red flag. When you're doing a recount and you're not allowing observers from, like, say, Democratic observers, you're not allowing them in, you're not allowing in reporters, that's a red flag, right? How come, you know, if it was like on the up and up, then they should allow, you know, observers from the other side to be at every table, right? The other recounts that they had, the hand recounts, did follow those rules. And they did have, you know, partisan observers from both sides. Right, and all of that, and there are very specific rules where how the ballots have to be handled, you know, who has to, you know, that kind of thing, right? And Cyber Ninjas is not following any of that shit. So they, for example, they got caught using blue pens, you know, on the ballots, right, which could damage the ballots and mess up some of the, you know, mess some of them up and give false returns, shit like that, right? And that was something that early on they got caught doing. Another thing was they're using UV lights to search the ballots for fingerprints, right? Which is, you know, not really an accepted method of verifying if a ballot is legit or not, you know? Like, so let's say, you know, because think about that. So they're taking a ballot, you know, let's say my phone is a ballot. They're taking the ballot, and then they're putting it under a light, and they're seeing if there's fingerprints on it. Well, what if there's a bunch of fingerprints on it? What does that mean? You know, does that mean that the ballot's phony because too many people handled it? You know, it's already been through a hand recount already once. So there's going to be fingerprints on it. So does it mean that if you can't determine if there's fingerprints, they get thrown away, or if they get smudged, whatever? Who's making this determination? Right. And so you're going to end up, they're going to end up throwing ballots out because of that. Another one, a really funny ass thing that I saw here was that they're searching the ballots for signs of bamboo, right? Because the conspiracy theory that's going through the QAnon people, the right wing, right, is that a whole bunch of ballots got shipped in from China and got counted. So obviously, if they come from China, then they must be contained in boxes that are made out of bamboo, because everybody knows that China just doesn't have cardboard. That they make everything out of bamboo, obviously. See, it's like they always have to throw that little bit of racism in there too, right? It's not good enough that they're wasting time and money, with like this stupid ass recount that's going to that's solely designed to like fucking put doubts on the election so that Donald Trump can like use it in his fucking re-election campaign in 2 years. That's not good enough. They have to throw a little bit of red meat to the racists also. It's like, oh yeah, there's these Chinese people, they pack everything in bamboo cartons because, obviously all of China is covered in bamboo forest and shit. It's ridiculous. It's the ridiculous fucking thing. It's so ridiculous. Oh my god, ridiculous. So anyway, then there was a picture that a reporter actually, who did get access to the site, tweeted out a picture of a former Arizona lawmaker counting the ballots. His name was Anthony Kern, right? So Anthony Kern is actually he was a elector, one of the guys, the Arizona elector, right, who goes and, for the electoral college, casts votes for the electoral college. His name is actually on these ballots, right? So what do you think? Here's a guy who has an obvious political bias counting ballots. What do you think? Can you really trust the results that you're going to get from this person, right? Conceivably, that's what you do when you have hand recounts. You have to vet the people who are doing the count and making sure that they're not going to cheat. That they're going to be fair. That they're going to make sure that they're not going to monkey with the ballots that they get. Put marks on them, shit like that. Well, now we have a guy who's on the goddamn ballot, right? Who also lost his, he lost his own re-election too. So if there's anybody that has a fucking political motive, it's this guy who was involved in the freaking political process to elect Donald fucking Trump. He's counting the goddamn ballots. It's like, just that right there is like the biggest red flag that you could possibly fucking have right here. Yet this continues, and it's going to continue on for weeks and weeks and weeks because, apparently they don't have enough people to get it done on time. And there's other conventions that the whole, that the space has already been rented out for, shit like that. So, and this is really, like, why are they doing this? Why are they doing another hand recount? After they already had one, right? They're doing another hand recount. Like, why? It's because so they can use it for Donald Trump's, re-election campaign. That's what it is. So even if they did overturn the election in Arizona, which they won't, okay, because let's say that this recount comes back, right, shows Donald Trump had more votes, right? Keep in mind, they're only recounting certain districts. Basically they're recounting districts where black people live. That's what they're doing. Okay, so that's, there's also a little bit more racism in there, right? And they're only looking at the races for president, and I think like senators. That's it. So they're not looking at anybody else, right? So let's say that it does come back and it says, oh, Donald Trump should have won this county, should have won this state. Does that mean that they're going to actually change the, elector count for Donald Trump? Probably not. The election's over, right? Let's say they even did you know, let's say that they did this and it did affect the election and said, oh, now Donald Trump has, you know, has 271 electoral votes and you know, Joe Biden should not be president. Does that mean Joe Biden's going to step down for being president? No. No, it's not going to change anything. This is basically propaganda is what this is. The entire reason they're doing this is it's basically just to sow doubt into the electoral results, so that in 2024, right, when Donald Trump decides to fucking run for election again, he can use this in his campaign ads and be like, it was stolen from me. See, Arizona shows that it was stolen. Arizona proves I should have been president this whole time, blah blah blah. Don't let them steal it again. That's what this is for. And it's the most transparent, ridiculous bullshit. You know, because this is what's going to happen. They're going to come back and they're going to find more votes for Trump than were originally counted because of all of these weird-ass shenanigans that are going on, right? And everybody and their mother is going to be screaming about how it's bullshit, but it's not going to matter because right-wing people, right, Trump supporters, Republicans in general don't really give a shit about what's actually true. Right? They don't care about the truth. They don't care about, you know, they do not care. And they won't bother researching any of the shit ever. Okay? And they're just going to believe whatever fucking Tucker Carlson and Newsmax tells them. You know, I think it's One American Network has exclusive rights to report on this or some shit. They're like the exclusive, you know, people that are allowed in there to like talk about, you know, to have cameras and shit like that. And it's blatant horseshit. It's blatant horseshit, and you know, I don't know. It's just so just be prepared. You know, be prepared. This is what's going to happen. This is how the next election cycle is going to go. This is the narrative on the right wing. How about it's all going to be it was stolen. You know, they're doubling down on the crazy. Okay, and it goes to show you that they don't have anything. They don't have any actual policies. You know, they're not interested in helping people. They're not interested in solving problems, right? Because the country has a million fucking problems right now. Like, you know, pandemics and people out of work. You know, there's still 20 million, you know, 30 million people out of work right now, right? You know, we got some stimulus, blah, blah, blah. That's great, whatever. That's not going to solve everything, you know, until the shit gets opened back up. And now we have, you know, we still have millions of people out of work. We have millions of people who are about to lose their houses and stuff like that when, you know, eviction moratoriums like come off. We have, you know, millions of small businesses that have just been closed permanently. And, you know, these are problems that, and granted, at the same time, we're also, you know, we're also on the cusp of like a massive economic boom, you know, because there's suppressed demand right now. You know, the demand is out there, right? People want to go out to eat. They want to like buy houses. They want to like, you know, they want to like go to the movies. They want to go to the mall, right? They want to do shit. They want to go to concerts. They want to go outside and do things and get shit back to normal, you know. So at the same time, you know, we also have the potential for great things to happen and to have actual prosperity. And it's like, we just need to do it the right way. We need to make sure that it's fair. We need to make sure that everyone's included, that we keep environmental concerns in you know, in mind, shit like that, you know. And, you know, we can do it with right leadership. And I'm actually kind of happy. The Biden people actually seem to be making really good decisions when it comes to these things, you know. Recently, there was a decision that they actually wanted to, for example, something I saw a few days ago where they're gonna basically allow generic versions of the vaccines to be manufactured overseas, right? Which is like, you know, there you go. There's a perfect example. I'm kind of rambling right now, but fuck it, I don't care. You know, it's kind of the perfect example of the difference in leadership. You know, when people say things like there's no difference between Republicans and Democrats, that's a perfect example right there. The Republicans would never have allowed patents on vaccines to be, you know, they never would have allowed generic versions of vaccines to be manufactured overseas ever in a million years. That just wouldn't have happened. And that just kind of goes to show right there, elections have consequences, right? That is going to result in millions of people's lives being saved, right? And it's because we fucking elected the right person. So, anyway. Yeah, so this is just some scary shit, man, and it's not just this recount. I mean, because apparently they're planning on doing these types of recounts in other states after this, That's one prong of the attack, and the other prong is going to be voter suppression laws, right? And we're already seeing that in several states. So just like with the trans bills that are all around the country, right? There's been, since the election, a massive amount of voter suppression bills that have been proposed all throughout the country. 843 bills so far passed in 47 states. So essentially every state, right, almost, has had some type of voter suppression. So some type of bill proposed that would, seek to curtail voting in one way or another. So far, only a few of them have actually been signed into law, roughly 9. The most famous of these, of course, was in Georgia. That's the one that is getting the most pushback, where businesses and stuff are starting to speak up about that, and we kind of already talked a little bit about Georgia, but just, a couple of things, reminders about some of the more egregious shit in that bill that is now law in Georgia. This is, it does things like it bans elected officials from sending out registrations. This is the one also where, you're not allowed to give somebody a glass of water who's waiting in line. That's the bill in Georgia, right? That's probably one of the more egregious, more popularized, I guess. And I wouldn't say, it's something that's been reported on the most, right? Popular. I don't want to make it sound like it's popular, but it's something that's been reported on a lot. Is this, ban from giving, supposedly the idea is they're supposed to ban people from giving gifts, right, for voters, but really what it translates to is that you couldn't give someone a glass of water who's waiting in line to vote. And, in Georgia, they've historically had, people waiting in line for, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours to vote, right? And this is something that's been a problem for years because it always works out the same way. It always works out well. People who live in areas where minorities live, those are the ones that have to end up waiting fucking 8 hours to vote. Where all the white people, they don't have that problem. They get to just go show up and vote, and it takes half an hour or whatever, and they leave, or not even half an hour, 15 minutes or some shit. Whereas, if you're a black person, you're waiting 12 hours. That's a classic voter suppression tactic right there. Right. And this is, what we're seeing in Georgia, right? We're starting to see all over the country. Laws have been passed in Texas, a law in Texas, which would make it a felony to give a voter application to somebody without them requesting it. That's one thing that you see in all of these, is that they want to limit the number of applications people get, right? So, whereas before in 2020, and the reason why was because it was successful in 2020. That's why they're banning it, right? Because in 2020, it's the middle of a pandemic, and everybody's like, well, we need to make sure people can vote. So there was no law against sending out, voter registration applications to people. So, the Democrats, what they did is they just sent them all out to their people. Said, here you go. Here's a voter registration thing. Please vote. Vote by mail. Well, that leads to higher turnout, because if you make it easy and convenient for people, right, people will go vote. If you make it a pain in the ass for people, if you make it so that, you have to drive 50 miles to vote in person, and you can only do it one day of the fucking week, and you have to register to vote, 6 months in advance, right? And then all that shit, and you have to show ID and all this other fucking baloney, and then you gotta wait 8 hours to fucking do it, people don't vote. But if you make it easy, if you make it so that you can, here's your voter registration thing, we'll just send it to you, All you got to do is fill it out, send it in. The postage is already paid, right? Shit like that. Then, you know, guess what? People will actually do it. People will participate in the system if it's not a major pain in the fucking, you know, nuts to do it. And so that's why Republicans are trying to ban it, because it worked. Because it they see like, oh shit, 8 million more people voted for the Democrat than the Republican. We got to do something about that. And this is what they're choosing to do. What they're choosing to do is to not appeal to the actual voters, right? To not try to, like, you know, because this is what you would think, right? If you kept losing, like, you know, let's say it's just any game that you're playing, you know. Let's say that you're fucking playing Among Us. There you go. Here's a game I haven't played in a long time, Among Us, right? And let's say you just keep getting owned over and over and over. You keep losing, you know, you suck. And you go, why do I suck so bad? You would think that you would kind of sit down and examine what you're doing wrong. And say, hey, maybe if I did this differently, or this, and this, next time I might last more than 5 minutes or some shit. Right. You know, the Republicans are not doing that. They're not examining what they're doing wrong. They're not deciding, like, hey, why is it that when more people vote, we lose elections? Why is that? You know, you would think they would say, well, maybe we're not appealing to people. Maybe we're appealing to the wrong people. Maybe we're doubling down on the racism and shit like that. You know, maybe people just don't like our message anymore. Maybe we're too fucking pro-corporate, you know, or pro-military industrial complex, or maybe the attitudes of the electorate have changed, and we can't get away with the fucking racist dog whistles and shit like that anymore. Maybe people care about more things than just cutting taxes for fucking rich people, you know. And you would think that they would adapt accordingly, but that's not what they're doing. And here's the thing, is that they have an opportunity, right? Because the country is very, very conservative, right? It is. The country's very conservative. You know, in particular, Latinos are very conservative, all right? Just in general, you know, as a demographic, you know, they tend to be very religious. They tend to be very anti-gay, right, Latinos? They also tend to be very anti-illegal immigration, which is funny because it's like, and you would think, you know, why? It's because the people that they see it as cheating. You know, they say, hey, I came to this country the right way. You know, my grandparents had to wait 20 years and shit to become citizens or whatever. And then these other people are just like skipping ahead, right? There's plenty of reasons for that, you know, and also you got to remember that, you know, just because you're a Latino, that just doesn't define everything about you. There's conservative Latinos, there's, you know, there's liberal people, there's progressives and all that, and, you know, there's also people from multiple different backgrounds. You know, someone who's from Guatemala will not necessarily have the same background as somebody who's from Puerto Rico, for example. Right. They won't vote for the same things. Right. They won't see the world the same way. It's like, you know, you got to remember we're lumping people into groups like this based on demographics, when in real life they're a lot more diverse. And that goes for everybody. That's just, you know, that's white people, that's black people, that's everybody, you know. People who are of Indian, you know, from, you know, India, you know, Southeast Asian, right? All that, you know, it's lots and lots of diversity in every group. There is really no demographic group who's a monolith out there. And to think so is to not, you know, that's a bias that you have to, like, you should really not, I don't know, like, that's a bias that we all need to identify with and prevent, you know, because it's really easy. It's really easy to see somebody and be like, you know, oh, you're a Latino, why are you voting for this guy? This guy, he doesn't give a shit about you, they're racist, blah, 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 right? And you got to think, it's like, well, no, that's not all, you know, not all Latinos are the same. Not all black people are the same. Not all white people are the same, right? Not all gay people are the same, or even trans people. You know, we're talking about Caitlyn Jenner earlier in the stream is against is against trans women in sports. It's like, she's a fucking athlete. You know, exactly that. That's exactly case in point right there. You know, real world example. of how you can't put people in little boxes, right? But there are also wider demographic patterns. Okay, one of those patterns is that Latinos as a demographic tend to be very anti-gay, right? They tend to be very traditional when it comes to things like religion and marriage, shit like that. And, very, religious, that kind of thing. And they're, you would think naturally they would gravitate towards a political party that embodies those ideals, right? And it's like Republicans have a perfect opportunity to expand their voter base, but they don't want to give up on that part of their electorate who is, hates Latinos, right? And so instead of doing the smart thing and ditching the white supremacists, and then in order to get votes from the Latinos, they find, it's better, I guess, somehow, I guess they just can't get over that racism. They can't get over the racism. They can't get over the anti Latino sentiment in their people, right? Which kind of goes to show, it's like there's certain things that it's just a bridge too far even for them. It's like, they're perfectly fine exploiting Latinos in commercials and shit like that, but they won't actually do anything to help them, right? They won't enact any policies that actually help these people or look out for their interests. So, anyway, I don't know. That's maybe a subject for a different video. Can you guys even see what I'm drawing here? So I'm putting in symbols and shit to make it look like it's like, a magic spell or something. Like you were going to invoke the deep ones or whatever, right? And then, so this will be like a page from the Necronomicon. And then when I do it all up and make a print out of it and stuff, it'll look all ancient and that kind of thing. So, anyway, getting back to our, kind of went off on the subject there. What time is it? 1:17. I am going to have to cut this at around 1 p.m. Pacific today, because I have to go have lunch with some family, but we still have some time here. So yeah, that's one reason, kind of went off on a tangent there, but I want to get back to the subject. You're seeing things like, for example, in Texas, it's now a felony to give a voter a vote by mail absentee ballot if they don't request it. So if you just send it out to them, because and once again, it's because that worked in 2020. So if you just send it out, you can go to jail. They have to request it specifically. Also, you have to have proof of a disability for mail-in voting. So, in California, for example, if you just want to vote by mail, you don't need a reason. You could just give me a mail-in ballot. Why? Because I'm lazy. That's why. Just give me a fucking mail-in ballot. Shut up. You know what I mean? Like, there's no, but I guess now in Texas you have to actually be disabled. So, let's say you live out in the middle of the country someplace, because you got to remember Texas is gigantic. Texas, is the second largest state in the country. It takes like 3 days to fucking drive across Texas. It's massively huge. Let's say you live in the middle of nowhere. Now you have to drive 20 miles and shit to go vote, whereas before you could just mail it. So this is going to hurt those people too. See, that's the thing. It's like they must have calculated that it'll hurt, Democrats and goddamn fucking motorcycles. They must have calculated that it'll hurt Democrats and liberals and shit more than it'll hurt their constituents who live out in the country, the rural people. Because this is who that's going to hurt the most there. So if you live in rural Texas, just remember Republicans don't give a shit about you. You're being sacrificed here. Right. Another one is, and this is something you see in a lot of these, this is also in the Georgia law as well, is it provides the ability for poll watchers to be present throughout election day, right? And in particular in Georgia, I don't think so much in Texas, but in Georgia specifically, those poll watchers now have the ability to object to multiple votes. So what this is, it's like basically in pretty much every state, there's poll watchers. Those are people that are there to make sure that there's no shenanigans going on, right? And if they see somebody who they think is cheating, then they can say, hey, I object to that guy's vote, right? That guy's vote doesn't get counted until it gets investigated, right? And often more than not, that doesn't happen until after the election's over. Right. And this can be a legitimate thing. If you actually do think that there's a guy cheating, for example, if you think there's someone who's, let's say, being paid to vote a certain way, or someone who's passing a phony ballot, shit like that, it can be a legitimate thing, you know. Usually it's bullshit, but, you know, I'm not saying that there's no legitimate reason to object to a ballot, you know. But one person objecting to an entire group, so basically how it's written in Georgia is like one guy can just be like, hey, all of the people from this district, I object from them, right? And then they'll have to investigate all of those ballots, and then those ballots will not get counted. And it's a tool, basically. It's basically saying, you know, democracy no longer matters in that district. If one person can disrupt the democratic process like that, then it's not democracy any longer. It's like, now, so this is what it means. This is what's going to happen. All right, this is my prediction, right? The next election, there will be, they'll be in Georgia. The next election will be happening. They'll get early results back from a certain area where minorities live. You'll get early results back. Those results will be going for the Democrat. Somebody is going to object to all those results. They won't get counted. And then Georgia's going to go to Republicans. That's exactly what's going to fucking happen, right? Because that's what the law allows for. The law allows for them to just basically reverse the outcome of fucking an election in a district like this, one that they don't agree with. You know, obviously they must have cheated. That's why I'm objecting to them. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. It's a blatant, like, anti-democratic power grab. So, and the thing is, I know a lot of my audience, you know, or the people I'm trying to appeal to at least, right? I know, like, you know, I post my videos and stuff in you know, progressive subreddits and things like that. And I know a lot of those people don't really give a shit about electoral politics so much. But this is why it matters, you know. This is why it's because when you lose that, that's your number one tool to affect change in the country, you know. It's not the only way, and some people would argue it's not even the best way, you know. Like, I think you just gave a quote there. Who was the quote? Let's see. Lewis the Hedgehog. Are you the one that said, I think even in the stream here, if voting actually mattered, they wouldn't allow people to do it? Did somebody just say that? I thought I just saw somebody put that quote. But anyway. I guess not, but, you know, still you would say, you know, it's maybe not the only method, you know, to affect social change, but it's one of the more direct methods. And if that gets taken away from you, right, you lose the ability to affect change through the democratic process, then your country starts going down a rabbit hole, right? That I think we can all agree that's a very bad thing. And, you know, before you know it, you actually do get soldiers in the streets, you know. That'll fucking happen. So it's in our best interest as a country to protect democracy as much as fucking possible, you know. Oh god, let's see. Another one related to that, related to the poll watchers thing, is that they can record people who need help with their filling out their ballots. So, you know, if you're a 90-year-old lady or something like that, and you're going to vote, you can't see, whatever, and you ask the guy for assistance, the law says right now, federal law says they have to help you. They have to make it accessible. You know, they have to, so if you can't read it or whatever, you know, your eyes are too bad, whatever, somebody has to come and help you fill the shit out. In Georgia and in Texas now, they can record you doing that. And, you know, so first off, that's a way of intimidation. You know, if you're going to be recorded while you fucking vote, like, why are they doing that? That's a way to intimidate people. Then they're going to use this as evidence to say that they were cheating. See, why did this lady need help, you know, getting her shit voted out? See, he's telling her how to vote. Throw this vote out. So that's fucking bullshit, right? Iowa was another one where this has been passed, these voter restriction laws. So that's another state in Iowa. They've made it so that you have less time to apply for an absentee ballot. right? It is also illegal there as well to just send out absentee ballots without asking for them. That's something they did on all of these, so that's kind of fucked up. Let's see. They have limited the number of drop boxes. They did this in Texas, Georgia, and Iowa, where before, you'd have multiple drop boxes throughout a district. Now they've only put one in Texas. So in Texas, it's only one. So, like I said, Texas is gigantic. It's huge. So your district may be, hundreds of miles, and there's only one drop-off box for hundreds of miles. That's really bad. In Iowa, they made it up to the discretion of the elected official to say how many there should be. So, lo and behold, they decide, hey, this district that has, 5 million voters only needs one drop-off box, because that's where all the black people live. But this district over here that only has 5,000, they can have 20, because that's where all the white people live. That's exactly what's going to fucking happen in Iowa, right? Seriously, you got to look you got to read between the lines for all these things. Like, why are they making it like that? What do you think is going to happen if the law is written in this way? This is exactly what's going to fucking happen. It's funny how the shit always breaks down over racial lines. A lot of right-wingers and stuff, they always claim race has nothing to do with it. Bullshit, race has everything to fucking do with it. It does, alright? When it comes to these things, I don't know. Another thing, in Texas, they made it so that actually Texas and Iowa, they made it so that, on election day, the polls close earlier, so now you have less time to do it, so you have less time to apply for a voter, absentee ballot, right? You have to show ID, right? In Georgia, you have to be disabled. Actually, in Texas, you actually have to be disabled as well in order to get one, right? Then if you want to go vote in person, if you do get one, then they take away all the drop boxes, right? Then if you do have to vote in person, nobody can give you any water when you're waiting for 12 fucking hours. And then you don't have time to vote anyway because they fucking closed the polls earlier, right? And whereas before, another thing in Georgia, before if you were waiting in line and the polls closed, they still had to stay open until everybody in line was done. Now they're trying to make it so they don't have to do that anymore. I think that was something that actually got stripped out. I think that's still the law, but still kind of goes to show what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it so that when it closed, everybody who was waiting in line had to go home. That's it, voting over. Oh, you've been waiting for 8 hours? Too fucking bad. Get out of here. So, if that's not fucking voter suppression, then what is, right? And some of this shit, I can't believe it, I have to think that some of this shit is going to trigger, provisions of the Voting Rights Act, right? I mean, fuck, I really hope that, like the ACLU, for example, right, or voting advocate groups are going to start suing these laws as soon as possible, for discrimination, because that's what they fucking are. How does that not violate the Voting Rights Act? When you go to a district where, all the black people in your fucking state live, and you take away all the voting, drop-off boxes, and you limit the amount of time they have to vote, how is that not discriminatory? It obviously fucking is. I don't know. So we'll see. We'll see, man. I mean, maybe, there you go. Maybe that's one way we can all, contribute. Maybe we could just donate money to these groups who are fighting this shit. Every little cent counts. These people got to get paid too, right? Let's see. Here's one in Utah that got really passed. And the law in Utah is specifically for voting purges. So this is a tool that they use often and a lot. The current governor of Georgia basically used voter purges to get elected. He essentially stole that election from Stacey Abrams, right? You purged something like 50,000 voters, and the majority of them out of districts that vote Democratic, all based on racial lines, by the way. So this is the guy that, this is the governor that's signing all this shit into law in Georgia right now. Basically used these same tactics for his own personal gain back in 2016, right? Anyway, or was it 2018? I can't remember. It was one of those two. But in Utah, they are changing the law so that when they go to purge voters, right, the county clerks will only have to cross-reference death certificates against voter registration rolls. And then they can remove the names of dead voters within 10 days. So it basically requires them to do that. Says that they have to do this. So they have to go within 10 days and remove people, right? What ends up happening more often than not is that they end up removing the wrong person. So if you get a guy named John Smith who dies, they see that, and then they go off and they remove everybody named John Smith from the voter rolls, right? And they only do it in districts where minorities vote. This is another thing too. They do it for disproportionately in districts where minorities vote. They'll also do things like they'll compare them to voter rolls in other states. So they'll say, hey, there's a guy named Juan Martinez that lives in Texas. This obviously must be the same Juan Martinez who lives in Georgia. So he's registered twice. Let's remove him from our voter rolls. This is exactly what happens, right? In Utah, basically the law is to make that process easier, saying that they don't have to have as rigorous checks that they had before. They also don't have to, they're not required to inform people that they've been removed from the voter rolls, right? They don't have to, there's no requirement saying that they have to audit the sources of data that they're getting, right? And they don't have to specify how many data points are being matched. So, it's like, where are they getting the data? So here's the scenario, right? Some fucking right-wing anti-voter group, who's motivated by like conspiracy theories of Joe Biden getting busloads of, truckloads of fake ballots from fucking China or whatever, sends out a bunch of information to the Republican-controlled, voter board in Utah, right? The law says they don't have to actually check where they're getting their information from, so they just go kick off 50,000 people from their voter rolls, right? And then the people that get kicked off, they don't have to notify them. They think that they're, registered to vote, so they go down to vote on election day. Lo and behold, they're not on the ballot. How come I'm not on the ballot, huh? I registered 6 months ago like you're supposed to. Oh, you got kicked off. Yeah, because your name matches like some stupid-ass list that we got from the Family Research Council or some shit, and there's nothing you can fucking do about it. Then you're basically disenfranchised. That's the scenario. That's exactly, that's what they're trying to do, right? This is how the law is written. The law is written to allow that scenario in Utah, right? And this is what we're seeing all over the country, in all these different places. And it's like every single one of these restrictions is designed to prevent Democrats from voting. They're designed to prevent specifically Democrats because they affect minorities who traditionally vote Democrat, right? Who tend to most often, more than not, vote for the Democrat. That's what it is, right? All of these restrictions don't affect, they don't affect districts with white people in them. That's just how it works, The white people, they always seem to be, their voting machines seem to be the latest, technology, right? Their lines never seem to be too long. They always seem to have more drop-off boxes, stuff like that, And it's always like, it's always where the black people live. It's always where the Latinos live. Those are the people who end up waiting fucking 15 hours in line to vote and have to drive 20 fucking miles to find a drop-off box, and who can't get time off to vote, right? So they vote absentee, they vote mail-in voting, that kind of thing, so that they don't have to take time off of work and shit to go vote, right? Because even though the law says you're allowed to take 2 hours off to vote, if you have to wait in line for 8 hours, that doesn't really fucking help you, does it? Right? Shit like that. So this is how it affects people. So how can we stop all this, right? Well, there is a law that is currently has been passed by the House, which has not gone through the Senate yet. You know, at the federal level, the For the People Act, right? And if you want to read up on the For the People Act, here is a good source of it right here that gives you a nice, you know, summary of what's in the For the People Act. There's way too much to actually go through, but, you know, I kind of want to hit up some of the points in the For the People Act that actually sounds like really good to me. Sounds like, you know, basic logical shit that we should have had for years, right? Number one, the For the People Act provides for online voter registration for federal elections nationwide. We should have had that 10 years ago. We should have had that 20 years ago. Why can you not register online to vote in every state? I can do it in California, right? How come you can't do it in every state? What's the problem? You know, it's like, you know, the only reason that you wouldn't have that is because you don't want people to fucking vote. Seriously. So that's one. It also allows you to update your voter information online, you know. And then, for example, it allows people who don't have DMV records, right? Because this is more often than not like, you know, when you go to vote, when you go to register online for the states that do have it, it's through the DMV, you know, Department of Motor Vehicles, or whatever they call it in your state. It might be called some other, you know, whatever department it is that you get your driver's license from is usually where you register to vote as well. But not everybody does that. Not everybody drives. You know, plenty of people in various states either don't drive because there's really good public transportation, say like in New York or something like that. You know, there's subways, that kind of thing. Or maybe they're too old to drive, you know, or maybe they're students and they don't have a car and they just never got a driver's license. They got, you know, state IDs or something like that. They don't need it, you know, whatever. There's plenty of reasons why people wouldn't drive. Well, you should still be able to register to vote online if you don't have a driver's license, correct? This would, you know, provide for that as well. I mean, that number one just seems like perfectly logical shit that we should have had, you know, the minute that internet access became widespread. This is something that we should have had. Anyway, let's see. It also provides for states to automatically register people to vote, right? So that way, you know, instead of making you opt in for it, you would have to opt out for it. I don't see a problem with that at all, you know. And, of course, this is the argument that you're going to get from people is like, oh, they're forcing you to do it. No, they're not. They're not forcing you to fucking do it. You know, there is nothing in this that says you have to vote. In fact, I would actually be in support of that, too, because there are countries that force you to vote. You know, Australia, for example. You know, it's the law. You have to fucking vote in Australia. I wish it was like that here. You know, but still, I understand, you know, they're a free country, and you are free to choose to not participate, you know. That doesn't mean that if the state, you know, if the Fed automatically registers you to vote, that doesn't mean that you're being forced to vote. But once again, you make it easy for people, and they're more likely to do it. And this is why we should do it, because it makes it easy for people, right? I mean, do we live in a democracy or do we not live in a fucking democracy? Do you want people to participate or not? You know, the only reason I can see that they don't want people to participate is because when people participate, Republicans lose elections. Right? Seriously. This also would put the For the People Act would also put limits on cross-state voter purges. So that's like we described earlier. You know, that's a big problem. It would put limits on that. Didn't really say how, but still, you know, any kind of regulations that we could throw on there to prevent those types of cheating shenanigans, I'm all for that. It would stop states from removing people from voter rolls any name from the rolls without either first obtaining their full name, their date of birth, social security number, the last four digits of their social security number, or any kind of documentation like that. So as it is right now, they can just remove you if they think you're the same. Like for example, like I said before, if you share the same name with somebody else that's already registered, you can get kicked, off the voter rolls. And what this would do is it would say, nope, you have to actually identify that person correctly. You can't just be like, hey, his name is also Juan Martinez, the same way that this other guy's name is Juan Martinez that lives 100 miles away from him. They must be the same person. No more of that shit. You have to go, no, we have to get some actual personally identifiable information to actually make sure that it's the same guy. So it would prevent basically kicking people off of rolls. It would prevent that sort of cheating. This is something that we should have had years ago, man. Seriously. Right? And then it would say it would require election officials to complete these cross-checks at least 6 months before an election, right? So, yeah, that gives plenty of time for people, if they do get kicked off of the rolls, and then also it would require them to be notified. So if you get kicked off the rolls, you gotta get notified, and it would give plenty of people who have been incorrectly kicked off voter rolls to go register again, right? Because another thing that the For the People Act would do is to give same-day voter registration. This is a thing that, progressives and Democrats and liberals and things, we've been fighting for this for years. Same-day voter registration, right? Plenty of countries in the world have this. In fact, I'm not sure if any of the states here in the United States do it, but I know that plenty of countries in Europe, for example, have same-day voter registration, where you just go down the day of the election, you register to vote, you show all your ID or whatever the fuck it is they require. You register to vote, and then you vote. The end. Why are you not... It just makes logical sense, doesn't it? Like, why would you not be allowed to do that? What possible reason is there to prevent somebody from registering to vote the day of the election? Right? I mean, and the only reason is bullshit conspiracy theories. You get shit like, for example, in 2016, when they were claiming that millions of illegal aliens were driving around in buses and voting for Hillary Clinton. Although apparently they did it all in California because she still lost the fucking election. Like, shit like that. Like, it's catering to right-wing delusions is why we don't have that, Let's see. Another one that it would really do is, which I'm really, happy about, is that it would allow minors who would be 18 by the time the election comes around. It allows them to register to vote, right? And that would be awesome, because here's the scenario. This is what happens in real life, right? Someone will be 17 years old. They'll turn 18 the day before the election, but the cutoff to register to vote was 6 months ago. So they don't get to vote in this election, even though they're 18. Right. Which doesn't seem fair. They're an adult now. I mean, and it doesn't even matter to me. I don't even give a shit if their birthday is election day. They're fucking an adult, right? And they're an adult. They should be allowed to participate, right? Why not? How come you can't register to vote if you're 17, right? And then by the time the election comes, you're 18, and then you vote. It's just another way of preventing young people from voting. Young people who tend to vote for Democrats, tend to vote for liberals, tend to vote for progressives. The younger you are, the more progressive you tend to vote. It's because they're not interested in that. They want to suppress that vote. There's no good fucking reason. If your motive, right, is to, ensure participation in democracy, if that's what you're interested in, then there's no reason to prevent that. The only reason you have would be to prevent people from participating. because you don't like the way they vote. Seriously. Let's see. Another one that I really like is that it would outlaw, specifically spreading misinformation about the times or places of voting. So, for example, you often see these sort of dirty tricks whenever an election comes around where someone will do some shit like they'll pass out flyers that will have the name of a polling place and the time. And then one, like this happened in California. I remember this a few years ago. And on one side of the flyer, it was in English and it gave the right time and the right place. And then on the other side, it was in Spanish and it gave the wrong time. And it was like the day before. Right? And you see shit like that all the time. That happens every election. You'll get, people will do robocalls, right? Saying that the election is on the wrong day, or they'll put up flyers, or they'll pass out pamphlets, shit like that, in certain areas, trying to trick people into voting the wrong day, or they'll say some shit like it's okay for you to vote twice, or that kind of thing, right? And usually these people always get away with it. It's very rare that like they end up, the people that engage in it's fucking cheating is what this is. It's like, fucking election fraud, right? People that are, it's not voter fraud, it's like a campaign fraud, I guess, or whatever, right? The people that engage in this usually always fucking get away with it. And this is like, because in some states that shit's not illegal, right? And this will finally like make that illegal nationwide. I mean, you would think logically that should be a thing that would be illegal right off the bat, like if I try to mislead people into like fucking up their vote, how is that not fucking, illegal? I don't understand that. So like that's like fantastic right there. It's like good. Like how can anybody argue against that? I don't know, but Republicans will, right? Republicans will argue against that. I guess it must be okay for them. They think it's okay to cheat. I don't know. So that's some fucking fucked up shit. Another thing is that it would allow former felons to get their right to vote back, right? I didn't really see the details on this because I know that some states already allow this. Because if you're a felon, obviously you can't vote when you're in prison. Which is bullshit. I would even go as far as to say, yes, you should allow people who are currently incarcerated to vote, but I understand that's a bridge too far for a lot of people. So, choose your battles, choose whichever hill you want to die on, folks, right? But still, if you get out of prison, you should be allowed to vote. If you go to jail, right, and then you're out of jail, the whole idea of prison is to rehabilitate people. That's the entire reason why you put someone in prison. You put people in prison, right, because they're a danger to society, and they must be separated from society before they commit crimes and victimize other people. But while they're in prison, the goal of prison is to fucking rehabilitate those people so that when they get out, they won't go back to fucking prison. That's the whole idea of why you have people in prison in the first place, right? If it wasn't, then we would just execute people for everything, right? If the idea was that, you're going to be punished for whatever, right, and then once you go to jail, that's it, the end, your life is over, why not just fucking kill everybody if they commit a crime? It's like, no. You throw them in prison so that when they get out, they learn their lesson. And then they go on to, at least that's, I don't know, am I wrong about that? That's what I thought prison was for, right? So part of participating in society is being able to vote. Well, how come, you commit a felony, that's it. Never allowed to vote ever again. There's certain states that still, some states will allow you to vote right off the bat. I think California does after a certain amount of time. So, sometimes it takes a little while. A couple of states, they make it so that you have to pay back whatever court fees and shit that you have, which effectively blocks people from voting forever because sometimes they get out of prison owing hundreds of thousands of dollars, so good luck with that shit. But still conceivably there should be some method of re-enfranchisement. A couple of states out there None at all. In Tennessee, for example, just if you're convicted of a felony in Tennessee, never again, never get to vote ever again in your entire life. That shouldn't be fair. People make mistakes. People do dumb things. And who's to say someone that gets out of prison who just doesn't genuinely reform their fucking life, goes on and starts a business, something like that, becomes an upstanding citizen or whatever, they should be allowed to vote again. So I'm all for that. And it's kind of fucked up that we need a federal law in order to like make that, the law of the land everywhere in the country. Right? I mean, I don't know. It's really fucked up. So yeah, this is how we can, this is one method right here. How can we fight back? We can get that passed. Well, that's currently stalled out in the Senate. It's most likely never going to pass, which is really fucked up. But we do have, conceivably a Democratic majority. People like, even Democrats are standing in the way of this, though. Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, a few others. This is most likely never going to get through. So the result of this is that all of those really draconian voter suppression laws are probably not going to be challenged. I mean, that's really it. This is either we pass a law that supersedes all of these at the federal level, that stops all this shit. The only other alternative is to take each and every one of these different laws that are getting passed in all these other states to voter suppression laws and work them through the court systems, right? Well, that, is not going to work in time. There's only, 3 years left until the next election? And it's funny how every time we end up trying to do that, every time we try to challenge these types of voter suppression laws, they never make it to they never make it through the courts in time for the actual fucking election, number one. Number two, the courts are overrun with Trump appointees. This is kind of coming back to bite us, right? 4 years of Trump where he got to like put 4 people in the fucking Supreme Court now. So the Supreme Court's going to be conservative for a generation, right? It's 5-4. It's going to be that way for a little while. Guys, get comfortable with that, right? So we're going to see lots of we're already seeing like disappointing court decisions coming out of the Supreme Court now. But it's not just them. It's like all of the federal courts have been stacked with Trump appointees. How many judges did they ram through in the 4 years that Trump was president? Something like 280. Some shit like that. It's ridiculous. So it's like pretty much, the courts are essentially conservative. And good luck getting these things to the courts here. So that's it. We're kind of screwed, And I think there's a really good chance that, that states like Georgia, states that went blue this time, Georgia in particular, they're going to go red again. And it's going to be because of these voter suppression laws, right? The other way you fight against that is to come out in overwhelming numbers. Well, people only tend to really vote in overwhelming numbers when it comes to presidential elections every 4 years. So it's pretty much a guarantee now that, the midterms are going to come. Democrats are going to lose the House, just in no small part to all of these voter restrictions. Less people are going to be able to vote in general. So less people are going to be motivated to vote, and then less people will be able to vote. They're going to lose their fucking, majority in the House, and then that's it. Biden's presidency is essentially over. Right? It's essentially over, and so better get what you can while the getting's good, I guess. So, I don't know. Write your congressman. Tell them to support the fucking We the People Act. We need to be putting the pressure, the thumb screws to people like Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. And we need to primary those motherfuckers. And it's like, and I know that's like, okay, well, we might end up losing that seat, but, whatever. I mean, Joe Manchin comes from a very conservative, district, right? Well, if he's not going to fucking help us, why are we wasting our money helping the guy get elected? If he's just going to, block all the shit that we try to do. Might as well just be a Republican there, so fuck them, right? And the same message needs to be, like, sent to Kristen Sinema and all the other fucking, like, pro-corporate conservative Democrats, you know. That's the thing that people don't understand, is that, you know, there's a very conservative wing to the Democratic Party as well, you know. We see in the media always focuses on people like AOC and, you know, Rashida Tlaib and stuff like that. You know, they tend to ignore the pro-corporate, pro-conservative wing of the Democrats who actually stand in the way of us making any fucking progress. So, anyhow, yeah, the country's fucked up. We have lots of problems here, and, you know, we can't really, we've already seen what the, you know, the Republicans are doing. They're going full fucking fascist here. They're taking away people's rights. They're taking away your voting rights. They're taking away, you know, the rights for people to determine their own lives and how they want to shape their own bodies and what they want to do with their own bodies, because they don't fucking care. And, you know, we've managed to kind of, you know, we've managed to kind of stem the tide of fascism in the country for a little while. Like I said at the beginning of the stream, I'm actually very, very happy about some of the things that are coming out of the Biden presidency. I mean, obviously, he's not the best president ever. Would have been really nice to get, like, say, Bernie Sanders in there or something. But I'm pleasantly surprised about a lot of the decisions that we get from him. And, you know, so when people say both sides are the same, when they say that there's no difference, and they say that the Democrats and the Republicans are two sides of the same coin, you know, real life doesn't really, you know, bear that out at all. So, you know, when was the last time the Democrats, like, passed a law to restrict voting, for example? Never. So, anyway, my hand hurts now. But we're almost through with this one, actually. I think it's looking pretty good. I'll probably put this on the SD shop when it's ready. My hand hurts. Fuck. Let's read some comments here, because I gotta end this in about 5 minutes. So I'll try to go through some of these comments as fast as I can. Let's see. Sorry, folks. I really, yeah, I have, like, family in town. Gotta go visit them and shit. Lewis the Hedgehog. Oh, wait, actually, let's start at the top. Okay. Lewis the Hedgehog, your brother got mad at me, huh? So, my brother just walked out, claims you're going too far. He thinks it's absurd you called Republicans fascists and that we should look out for cancel culture. Well, you know, cancel culture is a two-sided sword, right? My point that I'm making is that it's all they have right now. So yeah, you know, what is cancel culture? Cancel culture is essentially just people objecting to something that somebody says, and that's really much it. It's really not, you know, they call it cancel culture now, but it's the same shit that we've kind of always done. You know, a celebrity will do something wrong or whatever. You know, Paul Rubens gets caught masturbating in a fucking, you know, porn theater. Right? That's something that happened back in the 90s. I don't know if you guys remember that shit. You know, Pee Wee Herman gets busted, you know, masturbating in a public place. Right? Loses his TV show. Shit like that, you know, or whatever, right? That it's always kind of been like that, and it's a two-edged sword. You know, you get people on the left as well who get canceled all the time. You know, ContraPoints, for example, Lindsay Ellis, whatever, right? You know, somebody says something and somebody else takes it the wrong way. You can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. It's you know, the thing that I'm seeing now is that conservatives and Republican, you know, conservatives in general, it's like it's all they talk about. It's literally that's it, because they don't have any policies. They don't have any solutions to the multiple problems we have. You know, the solutions the Republicans have to the pandemic, right, is to not wear masks. That's their solution, right? You know, they're very anti-vax now. You know, you see anti-vax shit on Tucker Carlson and all that, right? You know, they think that the whole thing was like a conspiracy put on by, like, you know, Chinese fucking, you know, by China or whatever, right? They think it doesn't kill people. You know, that's another thing you'll see. Like, they'll go, oh, COVID only kills 2% of people. I have a 98% chance of surviving it. Why should I wear a mask? Why should I get vaccinated? Blah, 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 blah. Right? You know, and their solution to the millions of people who have lost work and who are about to, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of small businesses that have permanently closed, you know, their solution to all that is get a job. That's their solution. Right? So we already know what they have on the shelf, which is fucking nothing. And instead of, you know, instead of even acknowledging the very real problems we have in the country that we're facing, they're talking about fucking Dr. Seuss and Mr. Potato Head, right? And Coca-Cola and shit like that. This is what they're focusing on. So this is what I mean when I say that I'm calling out, you know, when I call out Republicans for cancel culture. It's like, yeah, you know, cancel culture is bullshit sometimes, you know, and sometimes people can get shit for things that have been misinterpreted, you know, interpreted or whatever, or sometimes it's ridiculous, blah 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 blah. Right? I fully agree there, but my point is, it's like this is what they're focusing on. Specifically, when I talk about Republicans, is they're focusing on this instead of trying to help solve the real problems that are happening in the country. See, I don't give a shit about politics so much, believe it or not. I really don't. Me personally, I don't care. I care about the actual real effects of policy on real people, right? So if you're a Republican and you had a real solution that actually solved a problem, right, I would listen to your solution. If your solution was something that didn't, you know, didn't oppress people, didn't like fucking, you know, ruin people's lives, and it actually like helped it. Like, do you have a solution to, you know, to the economy, the pandemic? Can you do it in such a way that, you know, can you open up in such a way that prevents people from dying, right? And prevents people from losing their jobs, right? I mean, what's your fucking solution? They don't have any. You know what I mean? Like, Democrats and progressives and shit actually have solutions, or at least they try to propose solutions that actually seem to work, and they work in other fucking countries, you know, things like universal health care, stuff like that, you know. I mean, at least they're trying to fucking do something. I mean, yeah, okay, people, you know, there's downsides to all of those proposals as well, you know, when it comes to spending shit like that, but, you know, at least they're trying to do something, and we have evidence that these types of the proposals like that, like, you know, socialist medicine, that kind of thing, those proposals actually work in other countries around the world. How come we can't do it here? So that's what I mean. You know, that's what I mean when I'm saying, like, you know, tell your brother, I don't know, bring him back in and play that part of the stream for him so he knows what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. It's like, you know, give me something more than, like, just fucking, you know, being angry at a children's, you know, children's book or toys or whatever. You know, give me more than that. Actually, like, give me some solutions to some shit that, you know, problems that people are actually really fucking suffering right now. You know, because Mr. fucking Potato Head is not a problem. Seriously. Anyway. I don't know. What else we got here? Lewis the Hedgehog. Somebody please think about the children until the children actually need our help. Yeah, exactly. You know, children are always a favorite target of the far right, you know, in order for them to get some fake brownie points. That's kind of a thing. You're seeing that in QAnon, you know, like there was a video I saw recently, you know, where it was talking about how they got like all the soccer moms and shit to believe in QAnon, and it was like they co-opted that Save the Children message that you would get from like, you know, there's actually is a group called Save the Children, you know, which is an anti sex trafficking group. And like QAnon sort of co-opted that, and it's funny because a lot of the QAnon people like apparently think that Save the Children is in on it, is in on the QAnon conspiracy now. Like, I don't know. I'll have to dig that video up. I sort of just watched it in passing. I mean, maybe that might be an interesting subject for a future stream. You know, the mainstreaming of QAnon, right? I mean, I've already done like 3 fucking streams on QAnon. I'm kind of sick of it, but shit, it doesn't really seem to be going away. You know what I mean? It seems to be evolving. You know, um, getting wackier and wackier as it goes on. Let's see. Dinah Cat loves me. I don't think there's been any case of reassignment surgery that's been done to anyone under 18. Yeah, I didn't. You know, that's the thing is that I think it's very much very much an invented wedge issue. I think it's already illegal in most states, if not all states, for people under 18 to get reassignment surgery. You know, so it's just like a thing that Republicans bring up in order to, you know, just a fucking like manufactured controversy when that comes. Um, and let's see, what else did you say? Puberty blockers are pretty rare too. Yeah, that one. I think that's what mainly all of these laws were about. They were about stopping children from getting puberty blockers. And it's like, you know, I mean, I can understand like I don't know. I can understand if they were not reversible. I could understand the concern there, but apparently they're reversible. And, you know, so what's the harm as far as I can see? If it's reversible, if the kid, um, they want to take them when they're like, 13 or something, and then let's say a few years later they decide, hey, this is not really for me. I'm confused or whatever, and I no longer believe this, blah, 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 blah. They can stop taking them, and they can take the other hormones or whatever and reverse whatever, processes that were arrested, that kind of thing. And if that's genuine and, if that's a process that can be done, there's no harm done. So it's like, why create a law that specifically bans that? And like I was saying, like I would support requiring parental consent to get that. I mean, first off, I don't see it's not free, obviously. So I don't see how like a minor could even get it without their parents paying for it or their insurance or whatever. Right. So that's number one. So obviously the parents are going to have some sort of input in this. But just banning it completely, like why? Why fucking ban it completely if it doesn't harm anyone? If it doesn't cause any irreversible medical problems or any shit like that, there's no reason to ban it except like, your fucking hyper religious constituents are using it as a fucking wedge issue and shit. That's really the only reason. Really the only reason to do it is to get brownie points with the fucking far religious right. And it's kind of disgusting. It's like these children are being exploited for this shit, man. Seriously. Anyway. Let's see. Adversary Fandom 2. China is not the only place with a bamboo. Yeah, exactly. Talking about the searching for bamboo on the ballots. I think, the reason why that's racist, in my opinion, that's obviously racist because it's like, first off, China's a modern country. They have access to cardboard, for fuck's sake. And it's a racist idea to me, like, oh, obviously they're using bamboo crates or whatnot. It's like, why? Like, you buy shit from China all the time. If when you buy like some like cheap electronics or something off of Amazon that gets shipped from China, does it come in a bamboo crate? For crying out loud, like, seriously, like, it's fucking it's just like, I guess that's a microaggression. I don't know. I'm actually part Asian, if you guys don't know that. I'm like I'm actually part part Filipino. It's a microaggression, to be like, oh, all fucking Asians live in they're all kung fu experts that live in bamboo forests and shit and speak like Mr. Miyagi or whatever. It's like, I don't know. Ridiculous to me. That just screams racism to me, So, let's see. So much for the whole, Lewis the Hedgehog, so much for the whole, if voting made a difference, they wouldn't let us do it argument. Why are they trying so hard to stop it then? Exactly. There you go. You know. Why are they trying to fucking stop it? They're trying, I don't know. You know, guys, I gotta get going here. I'm really sorry. It's past the, I have to actually go meet these people here pretty soon, so gonna have to cut this a little short. I do see that there's still some more comments in the thing, and you know, maybe we'll get to those next time. Anyway, I think we're pretty much done with this, right? Just need to like erase it and stuff. I think it turned out pretty well, don't you? You know, not bad. Not bad at all. He's got kind of, you can't really see that other side of it there. You know? Kind of an evil, weird, sort of zombie fishman sort of thing going. And I'll probably make prints of this and put it in the Etsy shop if anybody wants one. You know, just let me know. So, thanks guys. I'm gonna have to leave this. Gonna have to leave a little early here. Don't have time to get through all of your comments. Very sorry about that. But as I always do each time, gonna have to give my ending speech here. So, please like and subscribe, you know, as always, and tell your friends. Let me see here. Let me just open up all of my stuff. And also my other thing here, videos. All right. So here's my ending speech. Thank you all for coming. Let me turn on my monitor here. If you like what I do and you want to see more of my work, you can check me out. This is my DeviantArt website where I have, you know, different... this is where I put my artwork if you want to see more of my artwork. Here's actually the piece that we did over the last couple of live streams. You know, it's here, so if you actually want to, like, download this and see it in more detail and stuff, you could just go here and right-click it and just save it if you want to. So this is the whole thing, you know. I think it turned out pretty good. Anyway, so that's cool. That's on my DeviantArt site there. In fact, I'll put it in the I'll put it down in the chat. You know, let me just kind of move this over here so that you guys can see it if you want. Please check me out there. This here is my Etsy shop. So, if you like what I do and you want to support me monetarily, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop here. So here's another, this is actually another piece that we did in a live stream. I made like a print out of that, you know, looks pretty good, huh? I thought it turned out okay. Here's another one. This is a Lovecraft character that I do, and these are prints that I make, and each one comes out a little different. Blah 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 blah. You've heard me talk about these before. So yeah, if you like what I do and you want to support me, you know, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop here. I will put that down in the thing as well. Where is it? There we go. Thank you so much. This is my webcomic, hawanja.com, fun for the whole stupid family. It's got ninjas and demons and stuff. As you can see, shit's about to go down here. There's about to be a gigantic fight scene. So, trying to update this at least once a week, but it's more like once every 2 weeks. Should have another one here, another page up pretty soon, so please check me out there. This is my other website, my other YouTube channel, where I talk about video games and toys and movie reviews. I did Godzilla vs. Kong, and then, you know, I do mainly gaming unboxing, like hardware, stuff like that, old Famiclones, that kind of thing. So UCD videos, if you want to see me talk about non-political stuff, please check me out there as well. Anyway, thank you guys all so much. Thank you, Lewis the Hedgehog, as always. Good to see ya. Thank you, Dynacat. You know, you're awesome. Thank you, Adversary Fandon. Thank you, Bad66 Chevelles. Thanks for coming on. And Brandon Borneo. Awesome. Thank you for joining. You guys are the best. I really appreciate you. And I will be back next week at either 11 or 11:30. Probably most likely will be 11:30 on next Saturday. And next week we're going to be talking about right-wing Christian movements, things like Christian identity, that sort of thing. We're going to be continuing our little series where we're exploring different radical right-wing groups. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about religion too. So that'll be coming next week. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. I got to go ahead and end this. I will see you all later. Adios.